how would I feel if my husband came with a list of everything I do wrong? I, for some reason, thought it was okay to do that to him. How would a stranger see your spouse? Looking at them with brand new eyes, like, wow, they're really hardworking. Wow, he has great eyes, or she has beautiful hair, whatever it is, physical values, character, all of it. Because vulnerability is the key to intimacy.
Yes.
Vulnerability is scary. It reveals something tender about ourselves. So instead of making an attack, vulnerability would look like saying, hey, I really miss you. Underneath control is often fear, because control always has a little hidden message underneath. And that message is, now I know you love you for love.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another incredible episode of Husband and Life. I am Standish.
I'm Kelechi, and together we
are
are
the
Chapfikas.
Chapfikas. What's going on, babe?
Today, it's a very special day.
Special?
I need everybody to just know how special today is because we have a special guest.
A guest?
We got a guest.
Who we got?
The amazing Laura Amador, who is going to be our relationship expert for today, guys. So make sure you get your pen, your pad, get some wine, your tea, coffee if you prefer, because this is going to be amazing in terms of learning how you can communicate with your loved one, with your spouse, with your partner, and understanding that it takes time. It takes time to understand each other's love languages and really become intimate with each other. So that we're going to move on to Laura. Laura, are you with us today?
Yes, hi. I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and, chop it up with us and just let our people know that we have experts. We have experts that are here to help. And we know that you work alongside, women mostly and help them. But we wanted to look at your background mostly, and if you could just tell us a little bit about how you started, how you came about this wonderful role that you've got at the moment.
Oh, of course, thank you. Well, my background, first and foremost, is being a wife myself is what brought me down this road. My husband and I were dating for 5 years first, and then we got married, and then we moved in together, and I very quickly started to realize, this isn't exactly what I signed up for. And so I started to, as you do, Google, why isn't my husband opening up to me more, or how to get him to talk to me more about his day, or why doesn't he listen to me? Why doesn't he put his socks in the hamper? All the things.
Yep.
And I think I was so focused on trying to make things better that I became really hyper focused on all of the things that were going wrong. And so all of that just grew, and my frustration and my resentment grew. And after a few years of this, I found myself feeling quite lonely and quite disappointed, honestly, and really stuck. And so thankfully, I didn't give up looking for answers. I thought there has to be a way, right? The only two options can't be either settle and just give up and get over it, or leave. There has to be, those can't be the only two things. Life by Laura Doyle. And that was how I learned about the 6 intimacy skills. And the 6 intimacy skills completely changed my life. They changed my marriage. And what was so powerful about them was that they were all about me. There were things that I could do without having to twist my husband's arm and get him to read a book with me, or, check off the checklist with me. And so that was wonderful.
It's amazing.
So once you read what you read, how was it implementing those things, obviously, into your marriage and then eventually into other couples? How did you identify or get those nuggets which you were able to implement initially into your relationship and then help other couples?
Oh, yes. Well, after a few years of using the skills on my own, and it was just night and day, the difference. It was a huge transformation. I mean, we went from bickering almost daily over finances and what we wanted our future to look like. I mean, big things, big, values that ideally we would have figured out before marriage, and it was just a big mess. And so it was night and day. And so after several years, of just really looking at my life and looking at myself in the mirror and looking at the new relationship that my husband and I had built together. I thought, wow, more people need to know about this, especially coming from, my mother was a child of divorce, and I have so many close friends of mine who have either been children of separation or divorce, or had that within their own lives as adults as well. And it's a really painful process. It's really heartbreaking for everyone involved. And I just really wanted to get the message out. And I know that, I really believe that everyone is the expert of their own life. And I also just thought, wow, if more people knew, what a different world it could be.
So you talk about coming from a divorce background, as in your parents divorced, obviously. Did that make you want to go harder in your own relationship? Or were you overdoing it in time, trying to be the perfect wife just because you had that sort of upbringing and trauma, I can imagine, because it must have been a terrible experience. Did it make you want to go extra hard, waking up early, doing all the extra wifely duties you thought your husband would need?
Oh, well, thank you for asking for clarification. Actually, my parents are still married.
Oh.
But my mother was a child of divorce, and she talked to me a lot about that.
Right.
And see, it's generational though.
Yes.
Because my parents, I grew up watching them really struggle. I mean, clashing all the time. And that did really affect me and also my younger sisters. And I think exactly what you just said, of trying extra hard, that's what I saw my mom doing, because she didn't want us to go through the experience that she did. But that was also in its own way a painful experience at the time as well. And so by the time it came around to my marriage, I really, really wanted desperately I wanted to have children and have a family, but I wanted them to come into a family where there was happiness and peace and joy and love, and not the constant arguments and fighting and raised voices and slam doors. That was really important to me. And that the sugar plums are beautiful, but I don't know how to connect the dots. I don't know how to create what I wanted.
Yeah.
So obviously, fast forward, having found in yourself that this was something that wasn't working, that you wanted to better in your own relationship. You've gone forward, you've gone further now to empower other women now to do these things for themselves. What kind of steps, if you have any, would you suggest or you recommend to your clients, and how to kind of improve that communication, and at the same time trying to not sound like you're the nagging wife? Do you know what I mean? How do you get the right tone, the right messaging across?
Yeah, well, I think the foundation of everything is, and I say this all the time, is when I transform her marriage and when women that I work with transform their marriages, it's from the inside out. It's and this was the problem. I was doing it backwards. I was doing it from the outside in, meaning I was starting on the surface with the socks out of the hamper and like all of the symptoms, all of the things that were on the surface driving me nuts, but weren't really the core of the pain. And so starting on the inside out means with oneself. And for me and for most of the women that I speak to, that means bringing it way back, even just to self-love, to honoring. So many women that I speak to are so out of touch with what is really what they want in their life. So many women I speak to have sacrificed so much because they got it into their heads that love equals sacrifice. And I'm not saying that's not true. It does in a lot of ways, but they do it to such an extent that they lose themselves completely.
Right.
They sacrifice, they'll be the one that serves themselves they'll give the kids and the husband all of the fruits and veggies, and then they get the leftovers, right? Or they'll put aside their walk and stop doing the things they love so that they can drive everyone around and make sure that the house is clean. And so after years of this, they're so depleted, so exhausted, and so resentful. And often a big word I hear so much too is unappreciated. But I know for me, I had to come back and really say, okay, I put this on myself. I I somehow told myself that I have to sacrifice these things in order to be a good wife or be a good mom. But that's not the truth. And in fact, the opposite is true. Just like the kitchen is the center of the home, the women is the center of the family, right? And a woman is really powerful in a relationship for setting the tone of that relationship. And if she is exhausted and depleted and stretched so thin, there's no way that our relationship can thrive if she's not thriving.
Right.
And so that's step number one, is getting really, really, really serious about prioritizing the things that bring her joy, the things that just make her feel relaxed and happy again. So that's number one.
Okay.
And a lot of women will say, well, how's that going to help my marriage? You know, how is a bubble bath going to fix the trust issues or the communication issues and all of that? But those things, in my experience, cannot be addressed in a truly effective way until she is in a good place. Okay, I know for me, I can't bring my best self forward and communicate effectively when I'm exhausted and depleted and frustrated. So that's the prerequisite.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
And then even before any of the deeper communication or really addressing the issues, whatever they are, is really, and I know I had a lot of resistance to this, which really showed me how badly I needed to do it.
Yeah.
But it was to reconnect with, why did I choose this person? What is it about them that I appreciate and that I value? And what are all of the positive and beautiful things that they contribute to my life? So essentially, gratitude.
Gratitude, yeah.
Really reconnecting with that, because if I haven't done that work first, then I'm absolutely going to be, nagging and coming at a very a negative energy, attacking, and that's when my husband would be like, whoa, back away.
Yeah.
And then I would be scratching my head, wondering why we weren't having good communication. Well, that was a big piece of what was getting in the way.
Don't finish.
Sorry, did I interrupt?
Go ahead.
No. I was also going to ask, you're talking about obviously sorting out the things internally first before you can be able to address the issues that obviously annoy you, and like the socks and anything that's in there that is not the rubbish, stuff like that. We live in a society where we love comparison and we love TV relationships. How difficult is it for you to try and convince women that what you see on TV isn't real life? Because
that's a great question.
Yeah.
That resonates really deeply, because I was born a romantic at heart. And I think so many girls and women, love the Disney princess movies and all the romance and the chick flicks for a reason. And I sometimes speak with women who are in their 80s and still say, I just want the passion. I want to feel desired. I want my knight in shining armor to want to take care of me and to want to be my hero. And I think part of that, and this was part of my own journey, I used to beat myself up over wanting those things and try to beat it into my brain, like, that's not reality. You need to stop wanting and needing those things. And I think it's a balance between realizing that instead of trying to beat that desire out of myself, because that just brought shame and guilt and all sorts of feelings that weren't really helpful, instead refocusing on actually, what are all the ways that my husband really is really romantic? What are all the ways he does make me feel desired? And it came down, I didn't need anything big and like a movie or
grandiose gestures.
Exactly. Even something as simple as the way he held my gaze when he passed me his dinner plate or something like that. Just these little day-to-day interactions, being able to refocus on them and say, oh, maybe I do have what I wanted all along.
Yeah.
Coming back to gratitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Gratitude.
It's a great way to look at it, because you're then able to look back at all the little things that he's done for you and how he makes you feel in certain circumstances, and the little tiny maybe minute things that he does around the house that you used to take for granted, but now you can really see that he's trying at least, to take things into consideration. The things that you have said that you don't like, he's actually trying to work on them.
Exactly. And actually on that same note, shining a light on all of the things that, if we're talking about romance here, for example, but it could be anything, being able to reflect back how meaningful it is, or, oh my gosh, that just made me feel so special. Then that's the same thing as handing over the key to your happiness. That's saying, hey, that's like the recipe. This is what I love. I'm being super clear. And when he has that information, he can do something with it, instead of me just, sitting back and being upset that he doesn't know that he should be sweeping me off my feet every day. Right?
Yes. He can't read your mind. Why can't he read your mind? How dare he?
Exactly.
That's funny. So there's also, you say the lines of communication have to be there. Men attach, I need to talk, with, oh, what's about to go down? What have I done now? How do we create that safe space where I need to talk doesn't seem like World War III is about to happen?
Yes. Well, first of all, I love that you use the word safe.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's exactly what I think about as well, is emotional safety. As women, we really thrive off of emotional safety, which for us looks like being able to share our feelings and our thoughts and being able to feel heard. And I'll speak for myself, I tended to forget a lot that there's such a thing as emotional safety for my husband as well.
Right.
And that it wasn't very kind or very thoughtful to come to him with a big list of complaints, which is usually what came right after the "we need to talk" statement.
Yes.
And when I flip that around and think about, how would I feel if my husband came with a list of everything I do wrong? He's never done that. What if he did? I would be appalled.
Yeah.
And so I, for some reason, thought it was okay to do that to him. And so instead, when there is something that's on my heart, I still want to say it. But the first thing, I want to make sure that my self-care cup is nice and full so that I can bring my best self. I want to make sure that I've looked at the situation through a lens of gratitude. And I want to make sure that I'm standing for his greatness, for the greatness of our marriage, and for my own, and not coming from an energy of attacking or being defensive. And a way of doing that that's really important for me is speaking from my own paper, or in other words, not really making sure I'm not telling him what he needs to do. And this is tricky because for me, it's like, okay, he needs to know how to make me happy. And therefore I need to spell out exactly what he needs to do. And what I found actually instead really, really effective, but also respectful, is instead say the end vision, like the ultimate thing that I want. For example, my husband and I, we used to argue about finances a lot. Why? Again, that was just the symptom. That was just what was on the surface. Beneath that was that I was afraid that if we didn't get on the same page about saving, we'd never move out of our tiny apartment and move into a house and start to have children. That was my fear.
Yeah.
And so instead of constantly telling my husband, which is where I got stuck, and this is where I thought, well, I'm communicating, why is he not hearing? I would say to him, we need to save. Or let's figure out a way to save for a down payment, or, let's find different percentages. I was trying to logically figure out how to get him on the same page with me. But because he just wasn't working.
Yes.
And so what worked instead was, it was vulnerable, but I had to dig and say, okay, what am I so afraid of? And that helped me find, what is it really that I want? Because all of these little logistical things are just a distraction, and they're taking me off of these little paths, but what is the goal? I would love a house.
Yeah.
It was that simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
I made it so
Complicated.
complicated.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was come to my husband and say, hey, you know what? I would love to have a house, and I'd love to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And okay.
Sure.
I was like, wow, I can't believe I just struggled for like 3 years.
Surely.
So yeah,
Sometimes you don't realize how simple you have to make it. It doesn't need to be some kind of huge graphical story. You just need to get straight to the point and just say, this is what I would really love to have with you because I love you, and that's it.
Exactly. And it's hard to see when we're in it, right? But once we zoom out, it's like, okay, really, what is it underneath it all that I want? And that is when we really get to that powerful, effective, connecting communication that I think that we all want.
Mm-hmm.
So, if people were to say, okay, I've tried talking to him.
Yeah.
I've tried listening to him. I've tried approaching him with logic, no emotion behind it. I've tried to be vulnerable.
Like we had that dilemma last week where, do you love travel and do you love money? Now we have been able to combine the two things that we love the most, which is travel and money. And here we are living the lifestyle that we've always dreamed about. We are no longer worrying about our annual leave because we are not 9-to-5ers and we're not living paycheck to paycheck. You can monetize travel to help you live the lifestyle that you want, travel the world, and help other people understand how they can travel the world too. We help our clients to book the most amazing holidays, just like this one that we're on at the moment. And we want to help other people also live this lifestyle. So if you're interested, please do send us a message and we will give you all the information that you want. Making travel pay, that's what we do. Like we had that dilemma last week where Sarah was having issues with her husband. He was not being intimate with her anymore. And she said she tried talking to him, but it would just end up in arguments and them having a screaming match. He chose to not celebrate their anniversary. He chose to work on his car instead. And she just felt really, really sad about the fact that they weren't being intimate at all in any shape or form. So something like that, how would you advise, if it was Sarah or anyone that's watching, how would you advise them to go about trying to communicate with their husband?
That's a really painful situation. And I know many, many women, and actually including myself, who have experienced that. And it really does a number on the self-confidence and just feeling of worthiness and all of it, because it feels like a rejection over and over and over. So I just talked about desires, right? Expressing desires. And one exception to that, and this is really important with expressing desires as well, is that the desire is the vision, right? The end goal. And what's really beautiful and important about this is it's not telling anyone what they need to do, because then I am just like I wouldn't treat anyone else that I love and respect like a child. I want to make sure I'm not treating my husband that way too. That's what's really beautiful about that, is it expresses very clearly what I would love, what's meaningful to me, what's important to me. And the premise of that is that, hey, we care about each other. That means I care about your desires. But the important thing here is it's also respecting his autonomy. And I'm not saying, well, if you love me, you would do X, Y, Z.
Right.
And that's really disrespecting him as his own sovereign individual. And so when it comes to physical intimacy, that's one exception where I would not bring that up as a desire or as, hey, I want this. Especially because if that was there before, or whatever the expectation was at the beginning, most likely they already know. But that's not even really what I'm getting at here. What I'm getting at is when it has gone amiss, there are some things that are completely outside of our control, right? If it's just physical changes or
Yes.
whatever it is. But there's a lot that's within our control. And so before going over and talking about things outside of our control, I always want to look at what's within my control first. And for me, when this was an issue that I was facing, what was within my control is how I show up and how I interact with my husband. And during this time, well, I was interacting with him a lot by being defensive or just always, even if I wasn't saying anything out loud, in my head, I was very much, I had this script running of how unhappy I was.
Right.
And who's going to want to cuddle up to that?
Yeah,
I mean, you
exactly.
can tell.
Yeah.
We humans are very good at reading people's energy.
Yeah.
And if someone isn't liking us, well,
Yeah.
it's going to be kind of scary to approach them in that way. And so for that was the first thing I had to look at was myself. And when I fixed that, and not only how I felt about him, but really, really letting him be himself and not holding him to, well, if you loved me, you do this, you do that, you do that, because I just wanted him to do everything I wanted. I wanted him, like, I basically wanted to marry myself.
Yeah.
to be the exact person. Or,
Yeah.
I wanted him to change. And that I had already chosen him for a reason.
Exactly.
And I really had to remember those reasons and stop trying to change him.
Yeah.
I had to just appreciate the person that I'm with. And once I did that, everything clicked into place. And so coming back to, there are things that are outside of control, physical changes or, but that's the first thing I would say is to first look inwards and see, okay, how am I showing up when I interact with him? Am I giving him the space to really be himself without feeling criticized and controlled?
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, essentially, I would you've given us a few sort of things that women can implement and incorporate into their marriages and relationships. Which can help them almost rekindle or rebuild that communication that they might be losing. What is like your, let's say, 3 to 5 steps you would say are your ultimate must do's and must not do's? So the musts and must, what are those? You would say you shouldn't do this because it's going to do this, and we should do this because and such. Have you got 3 to 5? What can you offer us?
Sure. Okay, these are great. So these are from the 6 intimacy skills once again.
Of course, yeah.
So the first one I already went over a bit. So must not is think that we have to sacrifice, right? Give up ourselves because, or the more that I do, the more I will earn his love.
Yes.
And so replace that with, actually, when I love myself, I treat others how to treat me. And then I also become this warm, vibrant light for everyone around me.
Permeates
and
through
so when
me.
I thrive, my marriage thrives. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, as you mentioned, comparison, whether that's movies or the couple down the street or whatever it is, previous relationships, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Instead of comparison, that's what one must not do. It's looking at the person that you're with and seeing what is really unique and special and beautiful about them. Even if you have to look at them like you've never met them in your life before, like this is the first day that you've ever seen them. How would a stranger see your spouse? Looking at them with brand new eyes, like, wow, they're really hardworking. Or wow, he has great eyes, or she has beautiful hair, whatever it is, physical values, character, all of it. Gratitude. Third, I would say is whenever I have the urge to control, and this can look like being helpful. I used to often think, oh, I'm just going to help him and encourage him to ask for a raise.
Yeah.
Well, and then I'd wonder like, oh, why is he rolling his eyes? Well, whenever I was being helpful, really I was being controlling, and underneath control is often fear. What am I afraid of? Once I know what I'm afraid of, I have to ask myself, first of all, is this something I can even control? Can I actually make him ask for a raise? Second of all, if I know that every time that I try to control someone, which includes my husband, but anyone really, I am paying the price of intimacy with that person. I'm paying the price of connection. Because control always has a little hidden message underneath. And that message is, I know better than you.
Yes.
Or oh, you're not capable enough to figure this out. So I'm going to slip this little message to you. But that people read that loud and clear. It doesn't matter how much I think I'm, very gently mixing that in. He can sniff that out a mile away. And so is that costing me? Is that cost worth the price? And thirdly, if this is my fear even realistic? Because so often I blow things up and, if I really, why do I want him to get a raise? Well, I'm afraid that we'll be stuck at this situation forever. Are we really though? Actually, no, he's really smart,
Yes.
So I think that's the, and that comes really hand in hand with vulnerability. So what not to do here would be bring a list of everything that I'm upset about, because again, that's not something I would love to receive from my husband. No thanks.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and I used to actually ask him to tell me, but he knew better than to tell me. But really, I wanted him to tell me so I could tell him his list.
You go first.
You go first. That's amazing.
He was wiser than me. But yeah, instead of looking at, or bringing that really negative list, how can I be vulnerable about this? So one of the biggest examples I can give is he never spends any time with me. And then that turns into a complaint. And I used to say this to my husband all the time. You never want to spend time with me. You prioritize everything ahead of our relationship. That's a complaint.
Yes.
How to bring vulnerability into that. And because vulnerability is the key to intimacy.
Yes.
Vulnerability is scary. It reveals something tender about ourselves. So instead of making an attack, vulnerability would look like saying, hey, I really miss you. That's revealing something tender about yourself, not making it about the other person, making it about you. And I'll wrap up with one more. Let's see, which would it be?
The best one.
No, I think I would just say faith over fear. Because when you're in it, and I say this from my own experience, it's really hard to imagine that things will ever get better.
Yeah.
And another thing I hear a lot from women is, well, why do I have to do all this work and find what I'm afraid of so that I can be vulnerable? That is a lot of work, to figure all that stuff out. And it's like, he's the one that needs to change. He's the one that should be making the changes. And I would just say that I think at the end of the day, as long as you know what you want and why that's important to you, I think it doesn't exactly matter who takes the first step, because in my experience, I did the first step and I did that work first, but that set off a whole series of responses from him where he doubled down and started putting in so much effort and opening up in ways he never had before. And so he did the work in response to my work.
Right.
And so it's not about, I'm sludging away, doing everything, holding the weight of the relationship. It's no, actually, I was brought to this earth to fulfill a purpose. It is such a miracle that I'm born, that I'm on this earth, right? How many generations of ancestors had to survive for me to be here? And my purpose is to become the best version of me. And that means a beautiful consequence of becoming the best version of me is that I also become the best wife I can be. It's not that that's the goal. It's that's just the natural consequence of it.
Yeah.
And then what comes from that is that my husband is inspired to respond to me as his best self as well.
Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
So, thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted them to know, where they can find you, how you can get them in, help them, book it for a call, a consultation, all of those wonderful stuff,
Sure, thank you so much. Well, first of all, I would say that if anyone is interested in learning more about the intimacy skills, I have a guide called the 5 Steps to Reignite Connection in Your Marriage. And so it's a really great quick start. You can do it just a few days to start really experimenting with the skills in your own life. So that is at coachlauramAmador.com/5 steps.
Amazing.
And then on my website, I do also offer group coaching. I have a membership and also private one-on-one coaching. And I do offer a free consultation for them as well.
Amazing.
Amazing.
We'll put your website in our description as well.
We'll make sure they got all the details so they can contact you. We want to say thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time to speak with us today. And we hope you guys learned something today. And, if you have any questions, any comments, make sure you put them in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we will catch you next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Now I know.